Hello everyone, it's Sean here from Roll to Cast. Also, I played Tariq this season for Homeland. At the top of the episode, this is just to let you all know you may have noticed this as part 1. The post-season meditation we did this season went a lot longer than we expected it to. There were so many questions to get through, which we loved, but it meant that we wanted to take our time, and we also had a lot to say. So I've decided to break it up in 2 parts because it was 2 hours worth of recording. So you'll get a whole bunch of questions this week and a whole bunch of questions next week. Part 1, Part 2, it's very Avatar-ish. So we really hope you enjoy this pair of episodes, and thank you so much for all the questions you sent our way. Enjoy the episode. Welcome everybody to Roll to Cast. This is our post-season episode. We have done it. 32 episodes have wrapped of season 7, and we are back around the black table. And I am Sean. I played the role of Tariq, who was our resident waterbending. What was he called? The Rogue.
Yeah.
The Rogue with his roguish charm.
Always some rogue-like bacterium. I don't know.
I'm joined by...
Hello, I'm Ellen, and I played Kanahoshi, who was the fire-bending successor, now Prodigy. Ooh.
Were you idealist?
Sorry?
Didn't you become idealist?
It's been a long 32 episodes. Yes, I was.
Like, what do you mean the sheet in front of me?
It's literally in front of me.
Stop! I'm tired.
Phil, who are you?
Hello, I'm Phil. I played Zhang, and I was a martial character, and I played the Hammer.
Ooh.
And our newest member of Roll to Cast, player of Roll to Cast.
My name is Zola, and I played Clove, who was the guardian / healer of the group.
So with the hand movements as well.
Earthbender.
Yeah. And
what did
finally,
you do, Chris?
led by...
Hello, I'm Chris. I ran the game and did all the strange voices that everyone heard.
And some of the critters.
Loads of duos.
Yeah.
Loads of comedy duos.
Lots of comedy duos.
Lots of you speaking to each other. And you did a few of the strange little critters.
Yeah.
Always a
So
delight.
first of all, for those that have never heard an episode of Homeland, what are you doing? Go back and listen to
this is probably
Homeland.
not the best place to jump in.
Don't start
No, I think that'd be so fun.
Don't go to HBO's
All the
Homelander.
spoilers.
Wait, no, what is it called? What's that show?
Homelander, yeah.
Homelander?
Wow,
I
that's
thought
a pull. I love that.
I thought it was just Homeland.
Was
Is that
it?
with Claire Danes?
Yeah, with Claire Danes.
Yeah. Homelander is the baddie from The Boys.
Oh, the boys.
Boys.
Yeah, different shows. Anyway.
So listen to the season, and then when you come back to this, so what do? This is our post-season wrap-up that we do at the end of every season, where basically we look back on the season that was, talk about our thoughts, our feelings, probe each other for questions and queries, and also hear from you lovely listeners, because we got some delightful questions from our Discord, from our Twitter, and we'll be answering them today. And maybe a little sneak preview of what's to come next season. Ooh. That's kind of the way we are formulated here. So I don't know if anyone. I think we'll talk about ourselves first, and then we'll get on to the listener questions afterwards. But how does everyone feel? How does everyone feel kind of coming back? Because we listened to the episode together, the final episode.
It's interesting. This has been a record Cut that. No, don't laugh because then it's content.
I liked that. Keep it.
A record-breaking season for Roll to Cast in 2 different ways. It's our first PG season, which was a challenge.
Yes, it was.
Because we're all, we all use a bit of
language.
Colourful language.
Rude
Colourful
language,
yeah.
yes.
Profanities.
Well, speak for yourselves. I've never sworn on this podcast.
On this podcast. Sean, if you have any edits of Zola swearing.
I can actually tell you the 2 people that did were the
was
2 people that were
me.
just talking, Zola and Ellen.
Yeah.
Were the 2.
I really almost swore then. Yeah. I really held that back.
But also, I believe it's our longest season.
Yeah.
Tis.
Previously
and-
held by myself.
Yeah. And I just feel like it's been a really interesting season I feel like some of the seasons, like certain characters take more of a lead or have more of a complete arc. But really, in listening back to Homeland, I was really aware of how all of these characters managed to have kind of several little mini arcs over time and grow as an ensemble, which has just been a real treat to listen to. So that was really cool. And I guess for me, looking back as well, I feel like there was definitely like growing pains with the mechanics. I feel like sometimes there's more clunk with mechanics that it's almost counterintuitive, right? Where the game is not the game is more role play heavy, but because the role play and the mechanics are meshed in a way of kind of actors improv.
Yeah,
there's a bit of growing pains of
There's
like
a lot of negotiation.
I would buy the apocalypse, baby.
It's almost like feeling like fumbling around on a pool table. Hoping that you can like knock the balls into like
What an analogy.
Thank you. Like knock the balls into and sink them, and that's when you go, oh, we've triggered a mechanic here.
Yes.
We're all avid pool players here as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
All
I
five of
don't know
us.
why I picked pool today.
That's how we all met,
I
actually.
know.
At the pool hall.
Yeah,
I don't want to speak too much to that because I know that people want to know about the mechanics.
People want to talk
they
about
know
that,
they're in
yeah.
the questions. So,
but there was just
Foreboding.
I just remember there being and listening back as well. There's that definite growing pain to when we just start getting more comfortable calling out specific mechanics and enmeshing it in the role play that way. And there was a real joy to that. And there's always really a joy to having a new face on the podcast as well. Even though Zola and I laugh in a very similar way.
Yeah, I noticed that. Sometimes I was like, was that me or Elliot?
Yeah, because
talking?
I think our normal voices and our character voices are quite different. But when we get silly...
Yeah,
when
and we also
get
do the
silly-
same. We also do
Silly
the same
voice.
accents as well.
Yeah, when we get silly together, we always end up doing the same voice.
Yeah.
And we go like,
I gotta say,
me.
I had a very surreal
Yeah.
moment editing the podcast, the last episode in particular. So last week's episode, where I thought I made the most incredible joke, and it sounded like a joke I would made. But then I looked at the timeline, and it was Chris. You made the joke, and you sounded exactly like me. I was like, "Oh, that was such a good joke. Well done." It was
I'll just swap those on the timeline.
Do you remember what the joke was?
Yeah. It's actually at the very beginning of episode 32 where Ellen by mistake says the Prince of Prince, Prince of Princes, and then there's a gap, and then you just hear Jesus, and it's 100% you. And
That is a very on-brand
it's a very on-brand joke. I was like, oh,
Jesus.
that makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Jesus.
That is good.
I want to show off a couple of things you said there. I think the fact that it is an ensemble season with kind of like mini episode arcs. They don't neatly fit into individual episodes, but you can see how this is the Iron Village bit, this is the Senlin Village bit, this is the Old Man in the Hut bit. You know, it feels like the TV show, and it feels like an ensemble TV show as well. So I think that's part of the reason it went so long, is that we were trying to honor each of those arcs and each of the characters. For better or worse, I just think that's kind of maybe an explanation for that. But also the other things, you know, the idea that it is a PG season, and listening back to it, I was like, oh, this is great. It really feels like a kids TV show.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to say that, you know, we got cheesy, but we're very earnest. It's a real permission to be really earnest. And like, even in our other kind of wholesome season, Kids on Bikes, there's a certain amount of cynicism.
Yeah.
There's a kind of darkness to that world. The undercurrent is very creepy.
A lot more swears.
There's a lot more swears, yeah. Whereas this felt it's really wholesome. It's really forthright. We get to wear all our emotions on our sleeves, and I know that I got very speechy. Zhang's thing was like,
You sly dog, you got me monologuing.
giving speeches, and the game really gave us permission to do that, which
Yeah.
I thought was really, really nice. And yeah, it's good to be earnest and wholesome and not feel bad about it, and just be like, yeah, let's talk about friendship and honor and justice and trust. Yeah, I really liked that, stripping away the layers of cynicism in this recording. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because I obviously have two ties to the game, because I'm there as a character, but then I'm there for the edit the entire way through, and I kind of have the job of structuring it, right, and figuring out the flow of it and how it's going to go. And I was immediately struck by that. like how neatly it does fit into a TV series, right?
Yeah.
And how it very much, I was like, oh yeah, this does fit into little 2-3 episode arcs. And I was there as we were recording, kind of like trying to take note of a time and going, yep, that's that second episode there, that's that third episode there, and it fits nearly, okay, this will be the thing. And it's nice to like get as someone again who is the least familiar with the Avatar universe, still having not finished the series. I'm 2 seasons in.
You still haven't finished it? How do you start that and not finish that?
Oh, it's you'll get there.
I like living on the edge. That's
not why.
Maybe I'll just never finish the series.
Yeah, maybe
Just like
you
Mass
won't.
Effect with you.
I know.
You're in the same
God.
boat for Mass Effect. You finished game 2.
Game 2. I'm halfway through 3, and I've never had it spoiled for me. But yeah, it's kind of fantastic to feel. It made me feel like a kid again, to like kind of listen to one of those shows and just go, oh, it's very simple in its execution, episode to episode, and you can really just see. Like, I think it's a testament to Chris especially, and it is going to lead into a question that I have for you. But first, Zola.
Yeah. Let's talk to Zola.
I mean, because I did like a big binge listen of it last week, and I guess kind of similar to you in that, like, I thought it was like so clear, like the images and the paintings that we were all creating, like, yeah, especially you, Chris, but also just in general, like, the fights and those really big moments of ours that we would start describing. Like, I thought it was really, really vivid, the imagery that was there, and like I could see it all. It was very much like a TV show. I thought that was like so cool and very, very charming, actually. Very charming characters and like a very charming tone to it all. And I really enjoyed it. I think it was really funny when it first started airing, we hadn't finished recording.
No, we hadn't, had we? No. Yeah.
No, we'd only recorded maybe about 2/3 of the season
Yes.
when it first started coming out. And when I first started listening to it, I did not like hearing myself.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to get over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really rough. So I kind of stopped around Iron Village, maybe a bit before then. But then it's been so long now that listening back to it, I just found myself really enjoying it. And like that kind of awkwardness and like cringingness of hearing myself kind of disappeared. And I just like got really invested in the characters.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think everyone had really lovable, I know we were talking before about how you feel like Zhang was a little one-dimensional, but I actually think everyone had quite interesting, complex characters. And oh yeah, I loved that episode where we talked about what playbook our characters would change to.
Yes.
And I thought that was really cool that we knew straight away where the character growth of all our characters were going. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the episode where that was the playbook.
Yes, yeah, because we have a whole episode
Yeah,
just
'cause you
devoted to
changed.
a change in system and talking through that, and it's really bolstered by the fact that this game encourages such a collaborative play. It really feels like all of our fingerprints are on the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Well, I thought before it moves to me, let's congratulate Zola on a first full season of the podcast. Yay! Jolly good,
Yeah, very good.
I feel like we should have shirts that say I was in Roll to Cast and all they gave me was this lousy t-shirt.
Oh, I would die. I would love that so much. No,
we
it
can make
honestly
those.
was so much. And like, I think that was like truly the beauty of this as someone like on the podcast is obviously it was so much fun to play and I had so much fun doing the game. But then listening back was just so fun. And I was like, oh my God, these were great. And like, I've played D&D and like other RPGs before, and on those really amazing sessions where everything just comes together and you're like, oh, that was like a movie. I wish I could hear that back.
Yeah.
And now you can.
And now you
forever.
can. I
With
thought-
music.
I literally got through it and I was like, man, I'm going to listen to this next week. Like, it
Yeah.
was just so fun. And then to be able to relive it was like so great. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been,
It's been a
so
pleasure.
fun.
You were fantastic.
There's so
Yeah.
many
you so
great
much.
You're
mementos
amazing.
as well. We have great art by Centelia on
Yeah.
Twitter, which is just, it always makes me smile looking at all of our characters together.
And our Discord and our,
And our Instagram. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can
that's the
find
one.
it on all of our socials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I saw it on Facebook the other day.
I was posting that on Facebook. That was my Facebook. That's because we're friends
It's my
on
cover
Facebook.
image. on Twitter.
Yeah, I had a great time. I had a really fun time. Thank you everyone for going on the full-on fun journey with me. It was a new system for me. I haven't played, other than as a player, I haven't run a Powered by the Apocalypse game, so it was super exciting and super new for me. I really love a sincere game. I love sincere characters. I love earnest characters. I love honest characters. I might not play them all the time.
Says the vampire guy.
Well,
I was like,
that is sort of like I really love playing heavy genre, heavy straight into one way characters games. So I love like the gothic horror of Vampire the Masquerade, an 18+ game and full of, what it means to be human and losing your humanity to a monstrous beast that resides within you. And also I like playing teenagers where they go on fun adventures and try and save the world.
Yeah.
And can do it.
Yeah.
And hope is a real option. And sincerity and honesty and goodness and care are virtues and are espoused and are lifted up with cool martial art theme music underneath it.
Hey,
that's just cool stuff for me. The people around this table made that adventure happen. So I'm very grateful to all of you. It was a lovely journey to go on.
Now I'm just imagining Avatar of Darkness, like a blending of your last two games together.
Yeah, okay. You've twisted my arm. Oh,
Yeah, there you go. Oh, no.
I'll do that. Yeah. Wait, that's called Mage the Awakening.
Yes. I was going to say, I had like just an opening question for you. It's kind of something that we ask like in the start of every season. And because I know that this hasn't been asked in our questions here, what was the inspiration for you for the story that you ended up coming up with? Was it purely just stemming from Phil Zhang's background with Bashira, or did you have that in mind beforehand? Like, how did you come to the actual story creation?
The story creation came from me wanting to hook audiences to a previously unpacked moment in the Avatar universe that was not talked about by any of the comics or any of like common fan fiction or any of like the kind of extended lore.
Oh, is this untreaded ground?
Yeah, largely.
Yeah.
The Siege of Ba Sing Se happens in 95 AG, and this story takes in place in 93. So I was like, well, the siege comes out of nowhere. It's deep in Earth Kingdom territory. How did they get to set up a siege? Like that would be years of planning and processing and all of that sort of stuff. So I was like, okay, so there's something there. We don't know much about Iroh's son, and that seemed like an interesting character to dive into and to go from there. And so that's where that story came from. And then everything else kind of fell in and around that. It is sort of what, I'll talk about it now.
All right.
Because, it's kind of how...
Yeah.
So the game sets up... I love this game, and I think if I had my time again, I would approach it completely differently. That's what is it? Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
But there is advice in there about how to set up the game. And it is very much like, hey, do these things. These are non-negotiable. Sit down with the players and literally talk out what the story is going to be.
Yes, which we didn't do. That's
Yes.
right.
In explicit terms, tell them what the story is.
It's like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, go through it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
And
basically almost storyboard.
You storyboard it, right?
Yeah.
Collaboratively as a group, so there are no surprises or none narrative surprises that are like big
game shifting things.
Big narrative twists where you're like, oh, we're going to a new location, or this character is not the actual villain, this character is. Maybe you can sneak one or two of those in, but it's tricky. And not in, I don't think, a hubristic way. I read that and went, oh, that's not for me, not because I'm better than it, but because I've seen similar advice in other games. I think I still could write a story that doesn't take that into account. But what I learned very quickly from this game was that the starting point of the game is the players' playbooks. And I didn't realize that as much. That's what I would have my time again. Because I alluded to this earlier with a little joke, but I created so many NPCs.
Yeah,
and it's a bloat. There's arguably too many. And if I'd followed either the book's approach or my own kind of approach, which is just follow what the playbooks tell you to do, I wouldn't have that bloat. So that's something very interesting. I don't think it's a criticism of the game, but I think it is like maybe a warning. if you're super experienced with role-playing games that aren't powered by the apocalypse, you're going to want to just play it by the book. Do it raw. Don't rules as written. Do not try and tweak stuff. Yeah, it was super interesting. It's a very interesting game, and I think there's I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, maybe it's like too easy for like, maybe it's designed for new players and it's just for new players, and I don't think it is. I think that's just how the game kind of works.
Was that to also kind of aid in, we have a lot of pre-production on this show. It gives the GM time to write the story and all the players to kind of filter through ideas and, just generally build a lot of excitement and buzz around that. Because I know I did a similar thing for Kids on Bikes, which again asks you to sit down and you all build the world together. And me as a GM, I was like, no. Well, no, because I need to write it. And for
need time to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I need to write it for a podcast season. Was it like similar to that?
Yeah. There's the one time we did follow the book in Kids on Bikes. And this is a little inside baseball. If you listen to season 5, the first episode is, Sean, you got it down in the edge to 40 minutes, I think, or an hour.
Do you mean episode 0?
Episode 0.
I did that, yeah.
Yeah, episode 0. I looked at that and I went, this needs to be cut. I do not want to do it.
Yeah.
And
I'm the savage cutter. I cut
Phil
everything.
just went, no. And literally took it down to
Rid
from
of
like
it all.
I listen
like 50%.
I love your editing. I think it's great. But every so often, I'm listening to stuff you work down and I'm like, I would have cut that.
That episode 0 was 2 hours, Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super long.
And that, I think a similar thing would have happened in this instance.
Yes.
And it's also not necessarily how our players play. I know Sean, for instance, I don't think likes the idea of the collaborative kind of like story building an arc, like a 3-act structure.
The idea of us knowing everything that's going to happen, I would not enjoy it.
Same.
Yes.
It's like the excitement of like being presented with something new and being able to actually genuinely react to it. And if you knew what the plot line was, like even that one moment where we were in Senlin Village and we were like, oh, we can't knock the dam down because that happens in Avatar.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, that's like a fun little meta moment. But if that was happening a lot, I think I'd be frustrated by it.
Yeah.
I think I could go either way. There might be some advantage to this specific system in kind of going, this is your scene, here's where you start, here's where you end, and maybe leaving some, like almost a bit Brechtian of, by the end of this scene, our heroes will walk away defeated, and then you kind of play in that, so you still kind of find moments. Because I do feel like there were some moments in the game where I was like, ooh, I feel like maybe my instinct as a player is to go in this direction, but maybe the game really wants me to go here, kind of thing.
I'm gonna jump this into the first question because I think this follows on. So we're gonna start with Discord.
Okay.
And this is from AZ.
Hey, AZ.
Easy. I'd never know.
Easy like
Given this has been the
Sunday
longest of a season so far, did you come across any new challenges as the GM to keep it still feeling like a roll to cast game, or did the extra length come organically with an extra player at the table?
I think the extra length comes naturally because there's an extra player. An episode of Roll to Cast, roughly, we are aiming for 30 to 35 minutes, which divided by 4 is what? 7? 8?
Yeah, 7.5 minutes.
8.5,
yep.
Right? That means that, as a group, we are looking to give each other like 8 minutes, roughly, talking around the table, around the mics per episode. Like, that's kind of what the aim is. If you do that for 3 episodes, that's 24 minutes of extra time just across 3 episodes, right? Like, that's another 8 minutes, 8 minutes, 8 minutes. And in 5 episodes, you've actually got now 7 episodes worth of time, or 6 episodes worth of time with an extra 40 minutes by then. So, like, there's a lot of that adds a significant amount of bloat to it. I would also say that it is a game which requires players to have creative authority and a real articulation of how they progress when they succeed in something. D&D, you roll a awareness check, the DM, or a perception check. The DM describes what you see. Call of Cthulhu, you roll a sanity check, you check on a chart, and it tells you exactly what is going to happen. Avatar, you as the player describe what you do, and then roll dice and see if you succeed. And if you succeed, you describe what happens next.
Yeah, because Chris
but
never
also-
rolls dice once.
No, I mean, that's right.
But it's also, it's not only that. It's like if two players are interacting and one like tries to convince them, the other player then might have another choice for like, oh, okay, you've succeeded in convincing me. I'm going to respond by accepting, not accepting, and taking a condition. So each scene is a negotiation. Like, even between players, like after the roll. So it requires like everybody to muck in about what happens in this scene next to resolve the mechanics.
Which also adds to our necessity to rely, and Sean did a really strong job of it, of putting the out of character chat in the game.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's definitely something that
Adds a stack.
Yeah.
And that was a purpose, and that was purposely done as well, because I talked about this in Discord when we were asked about it a while ago. Is I usually try and, in terms of trying to still make it feel like roll to cast, every couple of seasons I'll try something new stylistically, and for Avatar, it's very much okay. A lot of the game talk is staying in more than what I would usually put in there because it was so contextually important to the story too.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we put in way more of the game. And I also think to the point where I as the player, as the DM, don't roll dice, means that I can't model the game effectively to the other players, right? Typically in our structure, I or whoever's the DM runs the game and kind of models how you want to play it, right? Like my initial responses tell you and set the tone of how the game is going to play. Like in Vampire, for instance, when I show you a scene and you try and do something where you try and rock the boat and you get pushed back down, that's setting the tone player to GM.
Yeah.
In this, because you have authority, I can't really do that as much as just set up a scene and be like, off you go.
Yeah. Sometimes,
we could
sometimes
feel it.
Sometimes you get a scene in a role playing game, and it's like, whatever happens, I have to open this box. You know, there are certain different ways I can go about opening this box, but by the end of the scene, the box must be open.
Yeah, and I feel like it took us a long time sometimes to work out that there was a box, and then and then also how to open it.
I love this analogy.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference, and this is across all Powered by the Apocalypse games to a more or lesser degree, but where the mechanics sit in relation to what's going on around the table. So the mechanics are in this are a lot to do with role play and emotional stakes, whereas a lot of most other games, I would argue, the mechanics are around obstacles.
Yes.
That your player faces. Do you overcome them or not?
Yeah.
Right? And that's to a degree like a plead. You need a certain outcome, so you plead with people. But there's also moments you're like, well, I want to emotionally affect your character because it makes an interesting scene, right? I want to say, for instance, Clove saying, why don't we just sneak off and leave these two people we don't know much about and just go strike out on our own, right? That's not an obstacle you have to overcome. That's a role-playing character moment that you want to explore with my character. And the mechanics let us resolve that and give us effects from it. That doesn't really occur in other games.
No, it's so different. It's actually something that I really love about this game because it forced you to make choices that your character wouldn't necessarily. Going into a conversation, you'd be like, oh yeah, Clove is going to want to stay here. Like in that moment, I was kind of forced in a way by the roles because I can't remember what happened, but I think you failed a roll against me, so then I had to try and affect you, and then I think I failed that roll, something like that. But
Yeah.
I essentially was forced to try and make a decision against what you'd said, so I kind of had to go that way, and it kind of like added this whole other layer to her character that would not have been there if I was not forced by the dice to make that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I love that there's an emotional gameplay going on as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
Even the fact that you cannot accept a guide and comfort.
Yeah.
You know, it's this idea of the role playing trying to become enmeshed, and no, it is enmeshed in the system. It reminds me of another Powered by the Apocalypse game by Magpie Games, Bluebeard's Bride, where there's a mechanic called Shiver in Fear, which is like if the GM is spooky enough with descriptions and a player visibly recoils, that triggers a mechanic. But like the fact that you can go, I refuse your in what would be in another game just a little role play scene free of system.
It would just be like a buff.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to get healed? Yes, I want to get healed.
Yeah. Or, just a little talk where we go, okay, we put the system to the side for a sec. Now it's fully engaged, and I can see how you're trying to evolve the story through this emotional moment, and I'm going to help that with a system thing. I'm going to deny this call out, which is going to create more conflict and create more juicy story moments.
Just to bring it back to the question, I think that's the reason all that stuff has to get left in, is because the role play is not separate from the mechanics, so that it needs to be contextualized, which is why that extended out and why it's a bit longer, I think.
Yeah.
What's the next question, Sean?
Oh, well, the next question, Chris, comes from Chris Channels.
Cool.
Chris to Chris.
From Chris Channels to Chris on
Oh,
the
to
Roll
me?
to Cast channel.
To
Love
me.
that.
Yes.
Ah.
Well, actually, no, it's for all of us, but
Oh,
we can
very
start
good.
with you.
Okay.
Because this is a conversation that you started with us. So, Chris Channel says, given that the Avatar franchise is aesthetically and conceptually influenced by many real-world cultures, was there any kind of conversation before or even during the game about portraying your characters in an authentic yet respectful way?
Yes, we went out of our way to secure a Asian Australian
Musician?
composer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who used appropriate instrumentation, in part because we want to be respectful of cultures and we want to engage with them honestly, but also because they're going to be way more skilled in using them than we ever would and have a cultural understanding of how to use them in a dynamic way.
Yes.
In terms of us as performers, we had a quick chat. I deliberately drew the real world comparisons. So the Fire Nation is Japan inspired. The Earth Kingdom is Chinese inspired. The Water Kingdom is Inuit inspired. And the air nomads are
Nepalese kind of
Yes.
Himalayan
Yeah.
culture.
It's
Himalayan
very
culture.
yeah.
And so we talked about that. I think in all of our games, we work in the performing arts, so we're aware of cultural significance. And so that was a deliberate thing that we went in with.
Yeah. And also pretty obvious things to note, but we have a conversation nonetheless. It's like, don't do voices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We are a bunch of white people doing
Well, they don't do
Avatar.
Asian voices in the show.
No,
so
but you
It's-
can see how it could easily drop into that. So
Absolutely,
those are important
It's also a
conversations to
thing
have.
of it's a really interesting conversation because Avatar is a show made by white people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using a kind of hodgepodge of a lot of Asian cultures and influences, in some ways very respectfully. And I think the thing that they talk about in the making of Avatar is that there's never a one-to-one parallel, which I think kind of strengthens the show in that there's a lot of influences, but it's never directly saying this is Nepal, this is China, this is Japan, this is Mongolia. Like it's a lot of influences that come from a lot of research. Of course, there can always be more conversations in including different voices. The Avatar team, there's a lot of little inside jokes of how far they've done research and including little gags and a lot of the Chinese script, if you read it, is accurate, but there's also a lot of jokes in there. It's an interesting conversation.
It
but,
is.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because we, at the end of the day, I guess for me, I certainly approached it of I'm just going to play this teen girl. I, as a white person, didn't feel comfortable thinking of her as a Chinese girl because that's not appropriate. So I know for me, that I just kind of played her as myself, and that's kind of as far as I felt it appropriate to be able to take. And then from there, I think what we did was really focus more on their emotional story. And so hopefully that's something that lots of people can relate to. So hopefully the fact that we did not make it culturally specific, because I don't think any of us really did.
Yeah.
I hope that fact means that lots of people are able to relate to it.
Yeah.
I think we made a big effort to honor the show, and
Yes.
the show honors the cultures that inspired it.
Yeah, and because nothing's going to be a direct parallel because, how can you, as a playing someone from the Fire Nation, yes, it has a lot of stylistic influence from Imperial Japan, but it's also got a lot of Chinese influence and a lot of also other different cultural influences.
Yeah.
So it's well, I can't play that. I'm not gonna. I'm from the Fire Nation.
It's also outside of sensitivities and stuff. It's really nice from an aesthetic perspective to have Asian architecture and sort of cultural norms, clothing styles that we can describe. Because everything, from this kind of level of technology in fiction is medieval Europe, right? So it's really nice to have pagodas and shrines and if as long as you, again, are not taking it into pastiche.
Yeah.
It's really refreshing and nice to live in that world and honor those aesthetic choices.
The difference between celebration and appropriation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But also, we're white people, so if you feel like we did a bad job and
Let
you
us
come
know.
from... Yeah, please do. We are always open to learn and be better, so please. Sean, next question.
Oh, I had a good segue
Oh, no.
for it.
I'm sorry.
I've got this,
I'm so
guys.
blunt.
Speaking of celebrating, everyone, Hurricane Hawk has decided to give us a way to celebrate our story and our characters, as he says. For each player, what was your favorite moment to roleplay during the series, and would you have done anything different if you could?
You can nominate someone.
Yeah, I was gonna. Zola.
Why would you do this? Only one.
Yeah, one.
I'm gonna say I know my one because we actually already brought it up because I really enjoyed it. It was one of the moments where I felt the most invested in the character, and that is when you called me out
Phil.
about trying to leave
I don't know
them.
if I can even look at you.
Wow.
I'm going to get our friends, and you need to think hard about what you value the most. I know I led us on this quest for vengeance, but it doesn't mean we can trample on the friends that we have too.
I think this really gets to her. I think she just kind of crumbles, and I think she's crying. I loved that moment because Irontown was really fun. It was this moment where she's got this budding thing with Tariq, but for some reason the dice force her to want to leave. And I remember in that moment, I remember stopping and coming out of roleplay because I was like, I think she's going to ask to leave. And you guys were like, then do it. And I was like, okay, here we go.
Roll the dice.
We can't stop you. Yeah, it was just so I don't know. It was very engaging for me. It was very exciting. I love that it kind of honored our relationship, Zhang and Chloe's relationship. I love that it was a little bit dramatic. That was a very cool. I think Irontown's one of my favorite little sections of the series anyway. But yeah, I remember that specific moment. I just really loved.
Anything you do differently?
Oh, in that moment?
I think he means generally.
Yeah, just if you could go back and do
I wouldn't
different.
say so much.
Welcome to podcasting, where you hate your voice.
I think in general, no. But knowing the game system would have been better. I felt I got lost often, I feel with all the different options. So there was I had status negative statuses inflicted for a really long time because I just wouldn't look at them. I would forget about it and I'd be like, I have to try clear that
I have
eventually.
to do this. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but in general, no. I really loved the season.
Nominate.
Chris.
Oh.
Because Chris has a separate question.
Oh, well, there you go. Then I nominate Phil.
So for me, it was Chris and my moment with the old man, the old soldier who taught me extra techniques.
Oh, yeah.
He laughed. How can I ever be strong enough? How can we ever make a difference?
He walks over to you, puts a hand on your shoulder, and says, "We do not fight to win. We fight to protect those we care about. If winning is all that we want, we will try and take over our worlds and dominate them without care, just like the Fire Nation. The reason they hurt us is because they do not care. The reason we fight back is because we do."
I think I understand. I really sank into Zhang at various points, which I found really liberating. It was great. Sometimes, improv for silliness is relatively easy. Improv it's a difficult skill in its own thing, and obviously we practice a hell of a lot to get to this point in the show. But improv for kind of silliness and wackiness is kind of okay. But when you're being earnest, you can really quickly trip over your words and kind of say the wrong thing or kind of repeat yourself or get lost. But with Zhang, he had such a clear kind of idea of what he wanted and what his purpose was. I got these really earnest moments of improv. Yes, in speechifying and stuff. But like with Chris and his NPCs and that moment in particular, it stands out to me as this... I was really affected during the performance of that. Like, I felt not just Zhang was learning, but I was gaining a bit of perspective as well. And it's a really good thing to experience as an actor through a role, is you're actually embodying the lessons that the character is learning.
And as an adult playing a teenager.
I know. But that kind of clarity and boiling down to principles is what makes well done teen drama so engaging, I think, because it strips away a lot of the adult crustiness that we lay on top of things.
Yeah, the cynicism, the pragmatism.
The pragmatism. Yeah, exactly right.
What would you do different?
I think maybe I would have tried to give a little bit of a lighter side to Zhang somewhere along the line. He has a couple of moments. But listening back to it, I'm like, oh my God, he's so serious.
I do like that in like comparison to everyone else.
I like
though.
the balance of it.
I wouldn't go very far. I just think he needs a little soup song of,
He's in the middle
levity.
of a war as well.
Yeah.
But maybe
Nominate.
that's what comes after.
Yeah.
Nominate.
That's to you, Sean.
Oh, okay. I reckon, honestly, for me, my favorite moment would have been when I finally knew... I mean, Tariq is the easiest character I've ever been able to play. Easiest voice I came up with, and I was like, oh, I know this guy. I know this idiot back to front now. But by the time we get to seeing the Earth militia force from the bushes... Bush Tariq is my favorite because by that point I understood, okay, I know how to set up the gag with Tariq, I know how to follow through, and I know how to get the landing because he's the comic relief of the series. And so from the pairing of the bushes where Clove and Tariq are in one bush and then the other two in the other, oh, what are the odds, to Bush Tariq, to the monologue that he does in front of him, it just like, that was just a whole bunch of fun.
The young kid will turn around and be like, Bush!
Man! Hi! I'm Tariq. In a bush. It's not my name, but it's what I'm doing. How are you?
I'm well.
Yeah? Sorry that this was this is a kind of weird. Context is needed. But should I just take the bush off, or are we safe here?
Can you?
Can I be safe?
No, take the bush off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, do that.
Do you want it?
No.
Okay. I'll just leave the bush here, and he steps
Monologue
outside.
was great.
Yeah, and it just that to me, I was like, okay, I know how this guy plays. You'd hope so by that point in the series, but yeah, I think it was the most fun. And it's just the ease, and I was like, oh, I know every move he's going to make now. Great, this is easy.
What would you do different?
Get better at calling people out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, because I would say unequivocally that I think Zola was the best at calling people out. Zola did it quick and fast, often. Just like, I'm calling you out.
As well, because you were the guardian, there was this sense of like almost being the, maybe not mentor figure, but the kind of, if not the de facto, like, because Zhang's more
like
of the
kind of
leader, but
the
you're kind of
emotional-
the,
Yeah.
you're the one who's always telling us to, fly right and holding us by our morals. And so,
But I say this to say that, like, I would watch you doing a lot of those moments and go, oh yeah, that would have been a good oh yeah, I can do that, and then just wouldn't do it. Like I wasn't quick enough on those things, and so similar to you, Zola, like just a better grasp on the system and being able to know the different plethora of things that I can employ in a given scene, and that just comes down to being able to balance such a system that demands you to be so mechanically focused while simultaneously being so roleplay focused at the same time. So I often didn't get that balance. Correct, unfortunately. Ellen.
Hey, kind of was a hard one. A hard one to crack for me. There was one thing that I was very sure about her, in that she was never going back home. Like that's the true fixed point of making her as a character. But I think all of the doubt came from because what do you... Okay, that's a really important choice to make. Then what? You've essentially got nothing now. You've got no family. You've got no history. You've got... All right, so now you run away from home. What do you do? So it was hard, and I felt a lot of that doubt as the character, but also as the player, going, "Oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do?" But I feel like the one time that I was really clear about what I wanted to do, and it just all kind of came together really nicely, was Kana telling the officers, the Fire Nation guards, who had followed her, wanting to follow in her lead, to throw away their
Soldiers.
uniform. I will never fight for the Hoshi clan. If I still have breath in me, it will be to burn down everything my family has made. If you want to follow what I've done, then take off that armor.
Kana Hoshi, says one of the soldiers. Are you sure?
I've never been sure of anything in my life.
They begin taking off their armor. They throw it at your feet.
I was like, ooh, yeah, I felt that one. I got it.
Yeah.
For a character who so much of her time on the podcast was spent in doubt. I don't know how to. I know I want to go forward, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
I think kind of had like a lot of individual lines rather than like big speechy moments.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of it.
A lot of emphatic statements.
Yeah. There's
Lots
like
of nevers and no's.
Yeah, I like things like, it's my job to forgive people, even people who don't deserve it. Mother, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, some good ones.
some scorching zingers.
Yeah, truly.
What was something you would do differently?
I think I hung on to my playbook a bit too long. I think I was really trying to make it work for me. And I think probably I should have changed it after the mine and started on a new one.
Can I talk to that point?
Sure, if you would like to.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Well, no, because I just remember it was a thing where I think in hindsight I went, oh, I probably left it a bit too long to change playbooks. That was probably the right moment back there. I wonder if a new moment will come up. I hope so. And then Chris presented me.
Chris was going to make it happen because it was so clear.
In pre-production, I suggested that you don't play it.
Yeah.
And I think
I should have listened.
Well, in retrospect, I shouldn't have suggested it. I would have strongly. I would have said, in knowing what I know now as the guy who ran it, I would have said don't play it, because what you articulated just then, where you were like, I know my character's never going back.
Yes.
Then the twin question of progress or tradition is actually a resolved question.
Yeah.
So the playbook is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And also in your playbook, it's like, don't make them a character who's hiding in like the bushes. Any character, any NPC should instantly know this character and instantly know what they're about.
Yeah.
And that's
Literally.
and that's what I like.
That's how
Like
we
it's literally
introduced.
in the thing.
That's so funny.
And so, and that's what I meant by at the very beginning when I said answer the question. The playbooks tell what the game is going to be.
Yeah.
Like you get 4 players, 3 players, or however many players you're going to get. They pick their playbooks, then you figure out what the story is going to be.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around, which is what I did and what most DMs will do.
Yeah, because if you don't, like, the whole thing with the hammer is you have an enemy.
Yeah.
Like you're chasing.
Yeah,
if
Phil
you don't
was
have
like,
that, it doesn't.
Then you're not the hammer.
The book doesn't do anything.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's a thing I regret, is not having Bashira be an episodic enemy. Is
right.
that I would have eliminated one of the other NPCs, probably Kana's mother, and have it be Bashira.
Makes sense.
Coming
Bashira more often.
more often. Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2 other times to make it rule of 3.
Yeah, and have me use my playbook.
An early encounter, lose, an early encounter, lose, and I'm so used to other systems where you fall forwards, but usually you fall forwards with pretty severe consequences. This game doesn't have those sorts of severe consequences. Death, all that sort of stuff is not on the table.
Yeah.
So if Bashira beats the 4 characters, oh well.
The story goes
Yeah,
on.
The story goes on.
They'll
Yeah.
wake up the next morning and
you
fight
live to
on.
fight
And
another day.
So that's to answer the question. What I would have done differently is definitely that. But I suspect you have a different question.
So Hurricane has said for the GM.
Yeah.
How many times did you have to remind yourself that you had to stop watching the players being awesome and that you had to get the story rolling again? So that idea of like allowing role play to continue on rather than the progression of the narrative. That balance.
Very rarely. I think I did a fairly decent job of prompting and poking towards the goal, but I didn't think that I had to do it too often. I think, if anything, I should have set up more scenes with more clear goals rather than scenes where players had... so the checkpoint scene where... you all had to get like money to stay the night.
Yes.
Fine, but maybe a little more clearly describing like, okay, so this is your objective, da 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 da. Maybe a little more of those. In retrospect, I'm maybe being too harsh on myself there.
I think you are, because I don't know, it felt like there was lots of times where it had clear objections of us to get. I guess it really helps that Phil was the hammer, because we had such a strong
it was
need
always
to be
go.
together.
Yeah.
And so even this thing of like, you wish Bashira had come in later, I personally love that he didn't, because I mean, it might have messed up your playbook a bit, Phil, because
I still had plenty to do.
yeah, you still had plenty to do, and you still used your playbook really
It made
well.
him a very menacing villain
It did.
to me.
And I think as soon as you meet them, they are less frightening.
Yeah.
Like Kana's mother, by the end, I was like, oh, she's still, still wary of her, but I didn't
She's
feel
your
the
level
same
2
fear.
villain.
Yeah, and so like it really set him up as this really omnipresent thing over the series, and I loved that.
The fact that it was his laugh as well was...
Yeah.
So I think, I feel pretty okay with how I balance those two things.
Nice.
And I think this is the sort of game that rewards players taking authority.
Yeah.
Tiger Claw has a question for all of us. What was what was everyone's favorite move/skill, either by their own character or another character? I don't know. I'm going to do this one because it's also just one of my favorite moments, because it's so clearly set up. It was a moment, which is why I really enjoyed the use of a skill, because Chris had so clearly set up the scene to utilize this one skill, which is your rules are stupid.
No, don't. I didn't feel much embarrassment and shame.
But it was so great. It's one of those, I think it's an example of one of those things where you have a clearly defined like outcome that is specifically designed to one particular thing. And when you hit that moment, there's such like a euphoric moment. I think that's where like Powered by the Apocalypse can really shine, when a move, like maybe it only gets to be used once, but when it gets used, it's so emphatically joyful. And just to hear Ellen be like, your rules are stupid.
I figured out what I was meant to be doing.
It's the Pathfinder D&D Starfinder rule of like, the mage has picked a spell. You create a scene, and it's a weird spell. It's a strange spell.
Why have they got this? I guess I'll put it in. Yeah.
Your job as the DM is to look at the sheet and put it in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've actively done harm to the player. So when Ellen picks that, I'm going, well, now I have to put it in.
Yeah.
So now I think that would probably be the only moment where I did have to kind of poke a little bit.
Yeah, I think again, it's that being used to other kind of systems where you're like, oh, how do I get my way out of this? And you're just kind of like troubleshooting different options. And it's like, just look in front. Just look on your player sheet.
Otherwise, my bad habits were fun to indulge in.
Yeah, bad habits are great.
It's like either do it yourself or bring someone with you. And those were fun.
Oh, there's so many little moments I'm trying to think of, but they're specifically moves.
Moves or skills of your own or someone else's.
The whole idea that Chris, Sean, and Zola kind of collaboratively created a move that
that's cool.
that means
so cool.
that two benders, earth and water, must come together to heal. I just thought it was just chef's kiss.
I feel like we expanded the lore of the show
I
a little bit.
did.
And it was also, but it was like feeding on a lot of stuff. Like it was like it's a moment that you can tell comes from a love of Avatar. Inspiration from the other koi spirits.
The yin and yang.
The yin and yang.
Yeah.
When do you reckon we're going to get our royalty checks for this?
Yeah, I know, right?
But also the
Magpie.
idea of exploring, Tariq being like, there is healing. Obviously, there's water healing, but I can't do that. It's not a thing allowed to me by the Water Nation. It's for women only. And it was just like expanding on the lore. It was two characters coming together emotionally, and this really special move that both of you have to use together. I was like, that's genius.
That was good. That was really good.
More, please.
Just on that thing about like some of the moves being extremely situational. In fact, I think that's my one bugbear with the whole system is that some moves are like extremely situational. Like when a grown-up offers you a fish on a Tuesday.
Oh, I love that move.
That's so
You
true.
can get two.
It's called
Two Fish
two for
Tuesday.
one.
Two Fish Tuesday.
It's like when that comes up, that's amazing.
That
You
is
get two
so
fish.
true.
You get
Two fish, that's so good.
Chris is like, I got to make that scene now.
You run the risk of either missing it,
Yes.
or it never being useful, right? And that's a shame.
Just on that point, that's why the game wants you to collectively construct
Yes.
the arcs.
Oh,
so
so
that
you
they
can be
can
like,
all
things
come
don't-
in.
when
yeah.
I'm really
That makes
Yes.
sense.
that makes sense. Why they're so subsist.
Otherwise,
I'm going to
I'm still
answer.
not convinced.
I'm going to answer my question in a slightly more kind of straightforward way.
Yes.
I loved Overwhelm.
Yeah.
Overwhelm is
Yeah.
the combat technique from the hammer, and it's really good.
It
It's
is.
It's one line. Punch with all your weight behind it. Mark 3 fatigue to inflict stunned.
Great.
Boom.
Beautiful. We love
and it's
it.
really good.
It's
It is.
very handy.
I don't think you
very
really use it
handy.
that much. Though.
It's got a huge cost, but it cancels the opponent's turn, which is a
Yes.
huge advantage.
Yes.
And it doesn't require like a lot of wrangling back and forth. Oh, they can choose to do this or do this or do this. It's just like it does this happens.
Yeah, great.
You're the
And
hammer. It's
you're the
simple.
hammer. You overwhelm them.
Yeah.
You strike. And I had lots of fun describing the ways in which I leapt into the fray with that move. So
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's a
as
good
our
one.
main fighter as well, it was very satisfying for us to have someone who was like pummeling
Thank
people.
goodness.
What about you, Zola?
My favorite, this is so selfish, but my favorite was my furrowed brow, which maxed my focus to 3.
Yes.
Because I rolled amazing. Like that was so fun
You
for me.
always did.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Friendship dice. I gave you those dice.
Yeah, I will take that. And then also, my furrowed brow made my focus just so good. And like, I think for me, one reason I really liked it is that it really grounded who the character was for me. I was like, above all else, she is focused and therefore she is calm. And like, it had all these like carry on effects into other parts about her personality. And yeah, it was also just fun always being like, oh yeah, I only rolled a 7, but still amazing.
Yeah, being able to roll I rolled a 4, so I still passed.
But with my plus 20.
Yeah, it was really satisfying for
What about
me.
you, Chris? Like being able to steal those moves. Did you have one that you particularly enjoyed?
Yeah, could you pass me your character sheet there, Zola?
Zola.
The other one, thank you.
should-
Move
If
with
it's not, it should be Gout of Flame, but carry
Gout
on.
of
so
Flame.
yeah, the dragon's breath kind of like that was cool. The gout of flame, the kind of what is it, breath of fire or something?
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
You get a wall of fire. You have to like take 4 fatigue.
That
to
was
get
Scary.
real cool.
Super
That's
good.
that's an Iro skill is where that's from. But I personally,
Did you love the combination of moves that I would do where it would... Is that the one
the
you're
wrong
thinking
sheet.
Sorry,
of?
it just
No,
sounds like
it's-
Chris is
Is it not
about to
me?
It's
order
not the-
something.
the wrong sheet.
It's like Protect and Retaliate was a really good combo.
It was very
I want
useful.
the one. I want one of the harmony ones. It's one of the harmony ones, and I think it's like it's a simple action where you just like push someone's balance over.
None of us had harmony.
No, and that's it. Test balance.
Yeah.
Test
balance.
balance.
It's an evade maneuver.
Yes.
It's an evade one, yeah.
Test balance. What a great thing to do. As a DM, to be like, I'm just going to psychologically manipulate your character and I win the combat that way. Or I win the exchange.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. What a fantastic tool to have at my dispense to be like, you know what? And I mean, you can use it with, strike or pressure or retaliate, right? Like these don't have to necessarily have to be combat. They can be verbal as well.
It's an exchange. It's not necessarily
yeah,
a fight.
I enjoyed-
You did that a bit, didn't you,
I enjoyed
Ellen?
using that to challenge Nanako to
Yeah.
Agni Kai.
I loved it, and I thought it for your because you did it twice, I think. I thought it just made so
it's
much
both
sense
with
that
the mother,
you wouldn't.
right?
Yes, because
Yeah.
why would you be fighting your mother like that? Like it made so much sense that you would take it psychological.
This is mother-daughter fighting now.
Yeah, this is the real stuff right here.
But being able to say words as a character to another character, as an NPC or as a GM to the player's character, and be like, okay, now you have a consequence to that. Not just, I've had plenty of times where I've had an NPC be like, here is a perfectly reasonable, justifiable argument against whatever your character's belief is, and the players have just gone, no, I no sell it. I am unswayed by that argument.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, but also
Boo.
apply that to like a combat scene, and it's like, well, I'm unaffected by the hits that I'm done. Like I'm, it
I shot you. No.
Well,
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
That's what I do in real life.
you get shot, and it's like, oh, you're hurt. It doesn't hurt. I'm damaged, but I'm not actually.
That was part 1 of the post-season meditation for Avatar Homeland. Come back next week for the second half with more of your questions answered. And remember, you have been listening to Homeland, which is a Roll2Cast production. The best way to find us is on Twitter, Discord, and our Patreon. All our podcasts are on Acast, Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcatchers. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Roll2Cast. Avatar Legends, the role-playing game, was created by Magpie Games. Nickelodeon, Avatar, and all related titles, logos, and characters are trademarks of Viacom International Incorporated. Let's, Sean, just 2 seconds.
I don't know how long that's been playing. I don't know if my mic picked up.
For post-season's sake, my phone decided to play. You remember that U2 album that went onto every single Apple?
Yes, I do. I was thinking about that the other day because I saw Bono apologize.
If there's anyone who's going to be litigious, it's Bono.
I'm just going to take the battery out.
It won't spontaneously turn it off.
Yes, but
I turned it off, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
I don't think it's been audible.
I'm not starting again.
Bono's coming back in
Bono's
every podcast.
This is a challenge to you, Bono.
can't remember where I was.
Strike us down. We'll only become more powerful.
I can't
We're
remember where I
talking
was.
about how
You've never finished.